All right, so in just under a fortnight, South Africa will host an investment conference. And while international foreign direct investment in South Africa stands at $1.3 billion, Intra Africa trade in terms of investment not doing so well. Very shortly, we will speak to Minister Rob Davies about this summit. And remember, it's the culmination of our efforts to attract billions in investment finance. First, let's take a look.
The African Union says that by 2030, the size of the African market is set to reach 1.7 billion people, with a combined and cumulative consumer and business spending of $6.7 trillion. Trade and investment between South Africa and the rest of the continent remains low.
If we look at trade between different countries in Africa, all of our total trade, our trade amongst different African countries still only represents 10% of our total trade. So 90% of our trade still happens with Europe, with the UK, with the US, with Asia, etc. So we really need to focus on creating markets for our own products and actually fulfilling our own needs that we have.
Nigeria and South Africa are the continent's two largest economies, but still face barriers to investing in each other's countries.
Nigerian investment in South Africa is relatively low. I think you've really got one big company, which is Dangote's Sipaku Cement. That's the only investment of size on a corporate level from Nigeria. There's a lot of smaller companies, SME sized, and you get a lot of private investment in South Africa, certainly in property and things like that. A lot of wealthy Nigerians have property in South Africa. But you're not seeing a big corporate presence here. And I think that's really because it's easier for Nigerians to invest in West Africa, and also Nigeria itself is such a big and growing market. So the incentive to come to South Africa is not as great as it is possibly for South African companies to go to Nigeria.
One of the reasons for this poor trade is said to be South Africa's difficult procedures.
The key things that are needed to boost trade and investment is certainly an obvious opportunity, competitive advantage, and I think also the ease of entry, the lower barriers to entry, the obvious opportunity. For example, we don't have Nigerian banks in South Africa, and that is partly a consequence of our own banks being so strong and soaking up so much market share.
South Africa is primed for more intra-Africa investment because of its infrastructure.
When investors consider coming into a particular country, one of the things that's important for them is to know that there's a road network, there's telecommunications, they can rely on Wi-Fi, internet, there's airports, etc. that is available. So those do play a very important role in the decision making of investors, depending on which business they're in. Of course, if they're in the business of providing infrastructure, then it might be slightly different. But again, it's something that we've seen a lot of activity on the continent. We've seen countries like China in particular being quite involved in investing in infrastructure on the African continent, although we're still lagging behind and we're still having some challenges with funding.
Nzenga Kunda, SABC News, Johannesburg.